I'll be telling you this story from the front of this old building that was once a one-room schoolhouse. This structure sat here in the 1800s. Now, the building sits on a road called Goodridge Road in Minnesink, New York. And I go past it all the time on my bicycle. One of my favorite bicycle loops. From my home in northern New Jersey, I pedal right across the state line into New York State. I turn onto Goodridge Road here. It's a 15-mile ride, and I like it because in those 15 miles, I rarely encounter 15 cars. So what happens on this ride is that I will sometimes let my guard down, and that's not like me. When I bicycle, I am vigilant. My eyes are open, my ears are open, I'm watching. But like I said, 15 miles, 15 cars, I tend to relax. When I turn out down here onto Goodridge Road, I could hear a car coming, I could hear a car going, so like I said, I let my guard down. And that's what happened one day. I was right here on Goodridge Road, and I just relaxed. I was looking down at my front tire, going around and around. I watched the black pavement roll underneath me. But then, something made me look up. And as soon as I did, I grabbed my brakes, and they work well, they're disc brakes, and I actually skidded and came to a halt because there, in the middle of the road, was a little kid. Now, when I stopped, I didn't stop this far away from her, or this far, or this far, not even this far. I was less than an inch. My front tire was just about touching her, and yet the kid didn't budge. She didn't jump. She didn't blink. She didn't flinch. Well, I jumped off my bike, and it took me a while. My heart was pounding out. I had to catch my breath. And I looked at her. I said, "What are you doing in the middle of the road?" And again, the little girl, she just stood there. She didn't say a word. She didn't blink. She just stared at me, looked right into my eyes. And I said, I could have hit you. I could have hit you. You could have gotten hurt. Honey, you got to walk on the side of the road, okay? And again, she didn't move. Didn't even blink. Just looked at me right into my eyes. I shook my head, got on my bike, and started biking around her. And as I started pedaling, I thought, oh my goodness, if I had hit her, she would have gone She would have gone flying. What about me? I'm old. Old? I'm ancient. I turned 70 a couple of years back. I thought about what would have happened. Hitting that pavement. I would have been in the hospital. I started thinking about my broken bones and, how uncomfortable I would be for so long, and that's what I was thinking when suddenly I looked up again. And I squeezed my brakes just in time. There, about 100 yards, about a football field's length in front of me, there was a giant Great Eastern white pine tree. It was at least 2 of my hugs around. Big tree. I watched as that trunk was cracking, and then suddenly it came crashing right across the roadway. I jumped off my bike and I stood. That tree was so big, the side branches were thicker than me. It came down with a crash, a thunderous crash. And all those branches exploded. Pieces of wood went flying like bullets. And I watched, and suddenly I realized if I hadn't stopped back there for that kid in the middle of the road, I would have been right there. And there's no doubt about it, I would have been dead. That little kid in the middle of the road. I turned around to look at her. She was gone. Where'd she go? No cars came by. School bus didn't come by. Well, I got on my bike. I turned around and I started pedaling, looking for her. Well, maybe she took my advice. She was walking on the side of the road. Well, there were fields on both sides, and I couldn't see her. And then I started to think, there was something unusual, something peculiar about that kid. What was it? Her face was normal enough. She had little pigtails sticking out of her head. But the way she was dressed, she didn't have on jeans and a sweatshirt like most kids. She was wearing a dress, a work dress, one of those dresses that have an apron. Oh, pinafore. A pinafore, old-fashioned looking. And she didn't have a backpack. Her books were buckled into a leather strap that she was holding over her shoulder. And with her other hand, she was carrying a little pail, like a tin bucket. And I could see an apple sticking like a lunch bucket. And then I thought, maybe it was dress-up day at school, fall harvest day or something like that. Yeah, that's what it was. And that's what I was thinking when I came right past this building, and something made me stop. And I stared up at it, and something made me put my bike down, and I slowly walked up to the building right here. And I lifted my arms. I don't know why. Something made me lift my arms, and I opened my hands, and I placed them right against the clapboard, the wooden siding of the building, just like this. And as soon as I did, I closed my eyes, and I saw her. There she was. Those little pigtails sticking out. She was looking right into my eyes, and then she smiled from ear to ear. I opened my eyes. Where'd you go? Where are you? I tried again. Nope. She was gone. She was gone, and I haven't seen her since. But at that moment, I knew who that kid was. And I knew why she was out in the middle of the road. She went there to save my life, to give me a few precious years. So now, whenever I bicycle on that 15-mile loop, and there are cars and trucks that do go by once in a while, when I take this 15-mile loop, when I come past this little building, I'll slow down, and I'll wave, and I'll holler at the top of my lungs. Hey, kiddo, thanks so much. Hey, I'm gonna see you again. Oh, I hope not too soon, but someday I'm gonna see you. And that day will come. The day will come when I'll have to leave this place, as we all eventually will. And on that day, there are a bunch of people that I'm gonna want to see. And one of them is that little girl. And when I see her, I'm gonna pick her up and swing her around in the air and give her a big hug. Yeah, I'm going to want to thank properly that good little ghostly girl of Goodridge Road. I hope you enjoyed my story, The Ghostly Girl of Goodridge Road. Now, after listening to my story, I know you've got a question for me. I could hear it. Ken, is that story true? The simple answer? Yes, of course. Because you see, every story I make up is true. But what you might want to really know is how that story came to me. I didn't sit down at my desk. The story's not written in pencil and paper. It's all up here, unwritten. And the story came to me one day when I was on my bicycle. It came to me on that day as I turned onto Goodridge Road. It came to me just as I passed that little one-room schoolhouse. And then every time I bicycled past that schoolhouse, another layer covered that story until it evolved into the story that you just heard. Oh, and one day, as I was bicycling, I saw that kid, that little girl in the story. I saw her as clear as could be. No, she wasn't in the road. I saw her up here. Now, I'm not going to say I'm a believer, and I'm not going to say that I don't believe. But is it possible that maybe one day as I was bicycling past that schoolhouse, the spirit of a young kid, that kid, came out and whispered into my ear, "Ken, I've got a story for you. I think you're going to like it. You should tell it." I don't know. But what I know is true is this. That building was there in the 1800s. When I went to the Port Jervis, New York Public Library, I found a book of Minnesink history, and there was a map of the 1870s that showed the schoolhouse right there. And I also read that the children in that schoolhouse, it was called the Waterloo School because that section of Minnesink is called Waterloo Mills. The children who went to that schoolhouse in the wintertime when they went out for recess, they would ice skate on the creek across the road. They would sled down the hill on the road right around the corner, a very steep road. They would sled right down that road. And of course, back then, there would be snow covering the road all winter long if the road department would not plow the road. When the snow on the road got a little bit thin, the folks would shovel snow back onto the roadway so that the farmers could glide over the road with their horse-drawn sleighs. Now, here's the other thing that I know to be true. Lots and lots of children who went to those one-room schoolhouses and the children who went to the Waterloo School, they never made it out of childhood. And that's evidenced by the gravestones. If you go to a local cemetery and you look at the gravestones, you will see that there are many, many children in those cemeteries. So once again, I hope you enjoyed my story. For all of you students of those one-room schoolhouses, and especially those of you who learned and studied at the Waterloo one-room schoolhouse, I hope you enjoyed my story.